Welcome to Keep Going, a podcast about failure and success, hosted by John Biggs. Every week, we talk to an amazing person about a time they failed and what they learned. And remember, when you're going through hell, keep going.
Welcome back to Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. I'm John Biggs. Today on the show, we have Alexandra Matthiesen. She has a 15-year history in marketing technology, and she's a marketing leader and board member, which is a mouthful. Welcome, Alexandra.
Thank you, John. And thank you for putting up with that mouthful. That is what happens when we're at this stage in career, right? There's a lot to say.
Well, I think we discussed this last time when we were prepping this. I think we both have similar LinkedIn, like length of things that we've done. There's 20 things each. And that doesn't look good to recruiters, but it makes us feel good, I guess, because we've done a lot of cool stuff.
As much as people can be averse to that, particularly from our parents' generation, the folks who landed and stayed at an organization for the entirety of a career, I like to think it speaks to dynamism. And I can earnestly say, it's not a reflection of my commitment to an organization. I love my work and show up.
It's a reflection of the organization's commitment to you, right? is how it usually shakes out.
That is the vibe of the day in the tech sector, for sure.
So with that chipper concept in mind, why don't we talk about what failure in your career, I suppose.
I would love that. I thought about this for a while before this call. Wanted to be sure that I showed up for this conversation in a way that is earnest and maybe even a little painful, because I have found that when I do share something that holds those two characteristics, it often allows other people to do the same. So for me, a point of failure that has been recurring, so a lesson that is going to be many, many moons in the making, is my inability to show up for myself and other people in terms of discrimination. This is something that I've encountered over the course of my career. I truly could not begin to count the number of times in which I've encountered somebody else experiencing discrimination. Sometimes it's a simple passing phrase, an uncouth joke. I've even laughed at those jokes out of discomfort. I know this is not unique to me. It's something that is probably universal in the tech sector, particularly for certain groups, particularly for underrepresented groups. You're more likely to be targeted as the other naturally. And it's something that I've never not regretted. Truly, John, I have this mess of experiences that I carry that I think back to routinely, moments when I wish I would have signaled that something was not okay with me or broadly was not acceptable. And I didn't. Because it didn't feel safe. And I worried that it would impact how I was seen. I have even laughed in response to jokes that were clearly at my expense as a result of being a woman. And if I were to tell you that I've wholly recovered from this, that I have a new best practice that I impart every single time, because it still happens, that would be artifice. It's not the truth. It's a constant work in progress. But because I feel those moments so intrinsically, I like to think that I'm making inroads, that I'm improving over time. And it's something that I'm focused on supporting, not only for myself, but for other people, providing clear prescriptive guidance to respond to those moments in ways that are authentic and hopefully impactful.
What's some advice that you have for everybody, essentially?
As much as I said prescriptive, it's not a one size fits all experience. There are so many variables that play in any given person's reality, right? Whether those are personal sociocultural variables or position in the organization or just the nature of the organization itself and its leadership team. Particularly in this work economy, the macro economy, I don't advise anybody go out with guns a-blazing, convinced that in a single drop of a phrase, they're going to change the workplace environment. But it can be as simple as holding back a laugh and finding a thoughtful way to invite a moment of pause. I have found that that is incredibly effective. So it doesn't even have to be tension inducing, beyond just a subtle demonstration of, I'm not here for that moment.
Mm-hmm.
There are moments where calling something out can be advantageous. But have you encountered the work of Loretta Ross?
Mm-mm.
Okay. She's incredible. Her perspective is that it's far more valuable to call people in than call them out. And that is a practice that I am practicing myself, particularly as I reach this point in my career where I'm stepping into leadership roles. And if anybody is at the figurative table who can safely do that, call somebody in and potentially change the collective course, it is leaders. I mean, how many times do you think, when did we forget that leadership means you often go first, but particularly when it's challenging and or dangerous and or tension inspiring? And so it's finding opportunities to start the conversation. One of the most valuable things I do routinely in an organization is find a moment that is not in that exact moment, not when the awkward joke was stated or the turn of phrase clearly demonstrated some sort of discriminatory perspective. It's before that, it's after that. In the moment, just pause, let it pass if you can, if you feel comfortable doing so. And then in retrospect, find a way to inspire a conversation on the value of diversity in how we speak to diverse perspectives and encourage diverse perspectives, on the value of diverse perspectives. It's undeniable, like even just at a business level, if people want to talk about like how can a technology organization thrive in the future, we're not going to create the next big solution without bringing to the fore perspectives that can reflect what those solutions could and should look like. Because right now, we're still seeing a lot of the same. And I would say up until this point, a lot of the same has been really impactful.
Mm-hmm.
But what does it look like when we have more people and personalities at that figurative table, helping see those next new solutions come to life, particularly in tech? Tech is something that is now arguably something that is a part of the life of the everyman or woman or person. And so they need to have a role in envisioning what those things, what those solutions can look like for them to be effective, for them to be successful in market.
So I think some of what you're talking about could be related to, I don't know, the sociopathic CEO, the toxic environment that's been created, that gets created in places that may have had plenty of time to gather all those barnacles over
Yeah.
time. How do you work in a place like that? Because especially in this environment, right? That's the place that has insurance because it already has its A
Yeah.
round or whatever. That's the place that has some relative security. But if your CEO is actively against DEI, actively almost discriminating, and this has happened to me, and
Yeah.
I'm sure it's happened to you,
It
um,
has.
what's the answer there?
My answer is not one that a lot of people will want to hear, and I have to accept that. I am now a firm believer that when we show up for a place and position every day, we are in fact putting our person behind that place and position. And it becomes in part a representation of who we are and our beliefs. And I think it's important for people to ask, do I want to support this organization?
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to effectively, implicitly support this person, their perspectives? It's a really challenging thing to consider, especially in this job market. Again, I'm not advising that anybody wake and say, I'm done with this role. I know for me, that simply does not often feel like an option. I am head of household, which is a very graceful way to say a single mother.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a lot of financial responsibilities, and simply, I love my work. It is deeply satisfying for me to show up and be a part of building an organization's marketing program and practice. But I have had moments, John, over the last couple of years in particular, where I've had to ask, like, what does it mean to show up for this every day? And yeah, if anything, just allowing yourself that moment, right? Even if nothing comes of it, if no decision is made, if no change comes to life, but you give yourself the space and time to consider, what am I here for? And what is this for? It's a deeply introspective question. And I'm so grateful that our generation is at a point where we can have this and hold
Mm-hmm.
this every day. I don't think our parents had that.
What are you doing on a regular basis to stop yourself? I think you discussed it a little bit, but I think there might be
Yeah,
some mental tools that you might be using that others can use.
absolutely. So, anyone who knows me even a bit knows I love running, um, but want to be really clear and vulnerable here. As much as it would be potentially advantageous to say it's, just a matter of fitness, it's not, or I should say, not solely a matter of physical fitness for me. It's a commitment to my mental health. For me, running every day is a key part of how I feel connected to myself and to my broader environment. I'm somebody who, outside of a very intentional running routine, would probably be better served by an anti-anxiety or anti-depression medication. That's the truth. So I take that on with great intentionality. And it's conversations like this one,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's being willing to show up to a moment when I could have given you some bullshit response about, oh, a point of failure that I magically turned into some like raving success. That's sort of the status quo in a lot of conversations like this one. And we often don't like gray answers that say there are no like clear paths forward. You just keep trying and trying and trying. And I think that's where I am in terms of how I stay whole. It's allowing myself to remain aware of the challenge every day and find simple ways like running to cut through the cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about the depression. I think a lot of the founders that I've talked to, they're all literally suffering from this, and they don't know it.
Yeah.
You avoided the medication. I'm trying to avoid the medication as well. What the running is one thing. Is there anything else that you've been doing over the years?
Oh my gosh, yes. So I am somebody who, from the time I was about 18 on, sought cognitive behavioral therapy. It has been, I cannot overstate this. Having a routine therapy practice has changed my life. I would not be where I am today without it. Full stop. It is not the form of therapy for everybody, but I do believe that there is something out there for everybody that can be within the realm of therapy. Mm-hmm. Also, this is the point in time in which we both need to acknowledge that the ability to seek therapy it is not accessible to everybody. There are barriers to entry to therapy, and I love that we're seeing some new approaches to that, some digital first approaches to that I've had some friends, some family members who have taken advantage of those resources, and with good results. But on depression specifically and anxiety, I think it's really important that we connect in moments like these to talk through the presence and the prevalence of anxiety and depression. I am a firm believer that our educational system would be far superior if in K through 12 environments we were teaching children basic neurobiology. Like, how do our brains function? And what does it look and feel like when things are a little off? And just understanding that often that is a matter of neural physiology. It's not a flaw. It's just a reality. And I think the more that we can normalize those realities and encourage the spread of that information, I think we'll see more conversations like this one.
All right. Well, this has been a fairly in-depth look at a lot of huge problems. Where can people find you? Where can people find more about you?
Please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm fairly active on the platform, and I am always here for a connection and conversation. So connect with me there, reach out in a direct message. I'm here for it.
All right. Wonderful. Alexandra, thank you for this. This has been super helpful.
Yeah.
This has been Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. I'm John Biggs. See you next week.